I love that now. You gotta watch it. I don't know how you can not watch it either.
Please don't use sorry, one second. Not necessarily tell me what in Australia.
Watching the car.
Supposed to be higher than the other lines, but don't have that. It's really dodgy shirts too. Quality.
A long time to get there.
I have to redo them though. They got my Twitter username on the back. So like change that for something else.
You're like, I don't need to.
Like something less tricky. Like I got to be
400.
Probably is worse, but I can't find it yet. So I'm gonna make sure, like, clean up as much as possible. This guy's going crazy with little down
Yeah, you're actually around this box.
Yeah, I'm excited to pull out this tape.
All right, everyone grab a seat. We're about to get started. Cool, thanks guys. I'm Jared, presenting for this evening. Welcome to Port80. Tonight we're lucky to have Tristan Good and Sing from Openstack. Oh no, I got it wrong, sorry. Tonight we're lucky to have, sorry, last minute thing, my bad. Tonight we're lucky to have Tristan Good from Aptira, and Tristan is also the Openstack Foundation Board Director. We also have Sina from Aptira. Tristan and Sina will be discussing and demonstrating Open Cloud. So we're not just having a discussion, we're actually having a demonstration, which is great. Also keep an eye out for the Braintree guys. We'll be giving out some swag throughout the evening. I like that. So they're giving swag. Braintree guys, where are you? Raise your hands. There you go. There you go. Free gifts. Grab them. Grab them while you can. Just a quick note, male bathrooms are right behind you. Raise your hand, Shane. Right behind Shane, male bathrooms. Women bathrooms are around the corner. Okay, so go around the elevators to the left. Also, quick note, if you go out, you won't get back in. Okay, so that's easy. All right, also, I like to go through some other housekeeping. Anchor is through our sponsors. Anchor is our kick-ass hosting provider. We also have Re-Interactive. I don't know why I keep getting this wrong, and because I do this every week. They're the kick-ass Ruby is on Rails web development. Sorry, I'm not even drunk. that's bad. I'm not even drunk. I swear, water. It's not vodka, it's water. Let's start all over. Re-Interactive, okay, is one of our sponsors. They're a kick-ass Ruby on Rails development. Ruby, Re-Interactive, please raise your hand. There you go, okay. All right, and also, we got a new one, General Assembly, kick-ass training on all things entrepreneurial. Can you please raise your hand? General Assembly, y'all here? All right, Anchor, raise your hand. That's what yelling at. Okay. All right, AWIA to give you what they're up to. Australian Web Awards are a showcase of outstanding work by web designers and developers. Submissions for the awards will be accepted until August. If it validates, and it's accessible and it's good, please register for it. If you have any questions, please see Jess. Jess, come in. There we go, okay. AWRA is always looking for new members. The membership is $20 for students, $50 for individuals, $150 for companies. Guys, I used to belong to other web organizations. That is cheap and expensive, so be advised to do it, okay? They give a lot to the industry. No one other government or not government, digital body is going to give you. We have Crucial in the house, we have Anchor, and we have Bulletproof. You're not going to have hosting providers like that in any other form, okay? So just a quick note on that. This year's Edge of the Web conference has been different until April this year. We'll be making it bigger, better. Stay tuned for more details. See Jess in regards to that. Also, Jess is the New South Wales State Secretary for the Australian Web Industry Association. Y'all give her a hand. Okay, see here if you have any other questions in regards to AWIA. Okay, I'm gonna go ahead and skip through all of this. I'm gonna do it already. All right. Anyway, okay. Now, as far as with the different meetup groups, Ruby on Rails, Swag Sydney, Sydney PHP, Zen Framework, Sydney Mobile Development Group, DevOps, Speed Networking, OzStackers. Speak to the people in regards to that. If you have any questions, please see Jess in regards to that. Hiring announcements. This is truly techie, okay? I'm techie, but after this, no. Okay, I swear to God. Anchor is looking for system admins, technical account managers, a customer service rep, and Haskell developers. Okay, Haskell. Did I get that right?
Yes.
Yep. Thank you. I got something right. Damn. All right, speak to Jess. I know, I said the same thing.
But Jess isn't even there.
Yo, I know that.
That's my uncle.
It might be Haskell, the new one. Okay. See Jess Anchor for that, and Re-Interactive is always looking for Ruby on Rails developers. Ruby? There you go. Okay. Now I'm going to hand this over to Tristan and Sina for the Sina.
Do you want to grab this laptop? We can unplug this one.
So while Sina's getting set up, g'day everyone, thank you very much for coming along tonight. I'm very excited to be here. This is a whole new crowd of people. I've got a couple of familiar faces, but it's really great to be taking Openstack out to a whole new group like this. Thank you very much to Jess, to Anchor, to Rare Interactive for sponsoring and organising tonight. While Sina's getting set up, changing things. Is that the right one? Yeah, cool. Okay, so we're going to talk about Openstack, which is cloud software. Now, I'm going to start with a very simple question. Does everybody here know what cloud is? I'm not talking about the few things in the sky. Is anyone going to put their hand up and say, no, I don't know what cloud is? You don't know anything about cloud? No. Okay. Had to be one. Okay, so cloud is utility computing basically. It's a little bit like, and this is how I explained it to my mum, which is kind of weird because mum lives on the Gold Coast and they don't have car sharing up there. But now in Surrey Hills where I live, they have car sharing. So you can walk down to the corner, grab a car, and take a car for an hour, and that's all. You don't have to own a car. Cloud computing is a little bit like that in that you can use a computer for the period of time that you want, but if you can equate it to car share, it's like walking down to a car share spot and you can order a truck or a bus or 15 trucks or 300 buses or a car or 5 cars or 6 Ferraris, and you can all take your mates to the beach or something like that. So if you can think of cloud computing in that sort of sense, it's kind of the best analogy I can think of to sort of everyday life. Car share, cloud computing. Does anyone disagree? Agree? No? Very good. Okay, so that's cloud computing covered. Are we good on that? We good on that?
Car share.
Yeah, it's kind of like car share. So it's you know, obviously the predominant provider of cloud computing at the moment is Amazon. They've got a huge gain on the market in terms of their market share. There's other providers out there, obviously, Aptira and things like that. What Openstack does is it presents an open source alternative to Amazon, basically. So we're going to be going into a little bit more detail about where it came from, what it's all about. So anyway, let's go back on for a sec. I'll just introduce who I actually am. So I run a little company called Aptira, and I'll tell you about that in a minute. I'm also a foundation board director, as I was introduced as, and I'm also an Openstack ambassador. There's about a dozen of us around the world that go out and do talks like this and stuff like that. This is kind of new to me too, so be gentle with me. I had never talked in front of an audience 2 years ago ever in my life. I'm 47 years old, and I've found myself in the last couple of years since that started getting very drunk the first night to get the courage up to actually do it, now talking to sort of 2,000 or 3,000, 4,000, 5,000 people in China and India and in the States and all over the place. So if I falter and fail and I start to get nervous, be gentle with me. I founded the user group in Australia, the Australian Openstack user group, which is another meetup group just like Port80, so we can probably exchange details and we can all join each other's groups at the end of this. Also, a sponsor and supporter of the Indian Openstack user group, which is massive. It's one of the biggest ones on the planet. So, like Port80, it's a group of people that are enthusiastic about OpenStack. Next slide, please, Master Sina. So, who's Aptira, and why am I here, and why is Aptira here? We are a leading provider of OpenStack in this country and in this region, and also in India. We started off September 9, 2009 at 9 minutes past 9 as a managed hosting provider. And what we were doing was kind of similar to what Anchor does, what Bulletproof does. You know, you guys are our friends in the industry, I guess. You know, the bad guys are kind of Hostworks and those Melbourne IT guys and all those big guys that we hate. So we were sort of a little small boutique hosting organisation, but specialising in things that were kind of weird and kind of hard. One of the classic things we do is every single Telstra store you walk into in the country, be it a reseller or a Telstra store proper. The overhead screens that you see, the touch screens, the iPads, everything that's projected in that store or that manages the customer interaction in that store, we run the infrastructure for that. And it's not like running a website or something like that. It's kind of, obviously critical to Telstra operations, and it's an application that they rely on and something that we've been doing actually since Aptira. Before Aptira started, we actually started the business to run that particular infrastructure. So we work a lot with rich media producers. We don't like to we do sort of promos and launch sites and things like that. We don't like to do click fails. I'm sure a few people here know what click fail is. And at the bottom, we're the founder and prime motivator of the Openstack community in Australia and India. The reason we're in India is kind of something that ties us to Anchor a little bit. Kavit, our CTO, who's based in India and runs our Indian operations, worked in a company that was based on the same floor and in the same office for a while as Anchor when Anchor started on York Street, I think it was, Jess. So
they were, a few years before that, they were on Clarence, and then to York, then back to Clarence, then here.
So my CTO was working in the same office for a little while, was sharing offices. I'm pretty sure I remember seeing that there, and a big long table as well.
Yeah.
So anyway, that's where we came from. I'm going to go into obviously what is Openstack. It's a platform ecosystem. Now, it's kind of more than just software. It's loosely coupled, for want of a better term. It's a bunch of different software projects that are tied together for the purpose of building cloud infrastructure. It's driven by a global community which is going absolutely nuts. I like to think of it as probably the hottest software project on the planet right now, bar none. It's open source. Every time you look at the stats, the numbers are growing of the people that are contributing to it, the companies are growing, and I'll go into a little bit more detail about that shortly. It's supported by a collaboration amongst technology vendors, so there's a whole bunch of companies that are involved with supporting Openstack. Everything from sort of the big guys, HP and IBM, down to the smaller guys like us. We're all behind the project, we all work together. It's a really weird thing to do. It's kind of really communist or socialist or something like that. I don't know what. It's something that's new to me, coming from a very proprietary software background. I was a Microsoft guy for a lot of years, so open source, like, what is this hippie shit? But it kind of works. It's kind of fun. So, and I get to grow beards too at work, so that's good. Extremely brief history. It originally came from NASA and Rackspace, two organisations that you've probably heard of. The reason I got interested in it was because I'm a NASA nut. I've been to see a couple of space shuttle takeoffs, I've been to Ames and ridden in the thing that goes around like this and things that go up and stuff like that. So that was kind of cool. That was part of becoming involved with the project, that the NASA guys were saying, hey, thanks for doing this in Australia. Come to NASA Ames and come and fly in our flight simulators. So I got involved with it first because I'm a NASA nut. And I thought, hey, this shit's got to be good because they don't write stuff that fails very well at all. And so anyway, they got together. NASA had a compute engine, if you like, for want of a better term, and Rackspace had a storage engine, and they got together and decided to call it Openstack. Rackspace were shepherding the project to begin with, and they made it into a foundation, which I'll talk about in a minute. So the fundamental basis of the platform is it's something that you can operate on standard hardware. So any sort of hardware you've got that's crap or good or whatever, it doesn't really care about what sort of hardware you're running Openstack on. A bunch of shared services provide interfaces for your compute resources, your networking resources, and your storage resources into that standard hardware. So that's controlled by APIs or a dashboard, which we'll show you all this stuff later, because what I'm going to do, I'm going to try and rip through this. Normally I do this a lot slower, and then we're going to do a demo later on, so it's probably better to actually show you what it looks like, rather than trying to explain its diagram. it's the worst diagram ever. It's complicated, but it's not that complicated. There's another diagram here, and we'll post these up on the Port80 site for you to have a look, because this one actually explains it a lot better. They're both done by the same person, but I don't know what happened. You had an epiphany.
No,
in some stage.
one's a logical diagram, one's conceptual.
Oh, okay. Right. Still, let's stick with this one. So, as you can see, there's the network component. There's the compute component, which is kind of like virtual machines. The network component joins those virtual machines together in a virtual network. Images are supplied, which are basically virtual machines that are ready to use on demand whenever you need to. And the identity service obviously manages how and who and what you can get into and what you can't get into. So it's I forgot block storage. As Sina said, block storage provides virtual disk drives, if you like, on in the cloud. So involved with all that, it basically provides a framework for building cloud infrastructure as a service. You may have heard that term before. To dig into deeper detail about what they actually do, I can explain all those there. You can probably read them all. Any questions on that? So, compute's basically, as I said before, virtual machines. And containers, yes, now, of course. The virtual networking joins them all together, and there's object storage, which brings in stuff like lots of pictures of cats and things like that. So you can store object storage in Openstack is probably the most mature component and the most scalable component. You can store trillions and trillions of pictures of cats in object store under Openstack if you really want to. We all know the internet's made of cats, so you can build yourself a new internet. Anything more there, Sina? No. So, how does Openstack work? It's an open source project, as I said, and it's kind of new in the way that the software development takes place. So, something I don't actually agree with, but what they do is they have a software release every 6 months, be it good, bad, ugly, or whatever. I would prefer a quality-based release cycle, but I'm just one person in the Openstack community. There's a whole bunch of people that prefer that, so that works, and that's what we do. We have a twice yearly design summit where all the software developers get together and they work out a blueprint for the next 6 months of development. So increasingly that's being influenced by operations and users. As the project's matured from being an experimental project to being a largely developer-driven project, it's now become more of an operator and a user-driven project. So the very last summit that was on a few weeks ago in Atlanta, there was a whole bunch of input from operators and people that were actually using OpenStack at scale, people like eBay, people like Comcast, people like Bloomberg in the States. These guys are building massive big clouds, private clouds built on OpenStack, feeding their experiences and stuff back into the development process. So every 6 months we get together. The next time we'll be getting together will be in Paris in November, which is cool because who doesn't want to go to Paris? All the developers will sit down. They have a collaborative blueprint process where they use a thing called Etherpad. So everyone gets up there and they put in comments and things and try and work out how the software is going to fit together and what's going to happen and what we're going to put in, what we're going to leave out. And it's all a very, as I said, it's like the hippies that got together and we're doing this sort of like collaborative thing.
The word is democratic.
Yeah, which is a democratic way of doing things, right? So
Better than that, meritocratic.
Well, meritocratic, well, I don't like to use that word because it's actually, the original use of meritocracy was a dysfunctional utopia if you look back at where it actually came from. So
So you got him started now.
Meritocracy is a kind of a funny word to use. I don't like to call it that. I prefer it's a democratic view. We can argue about that later. That's a good point. So a couple of thousand developers so far. We've only been, Openstack was only released just under 4 years ago as an open source project. So that's kind of cool. And there's about 450 per month developers that are actually active. That's the cumulative developer count working on the software. 366 companies worldwide. As I said before, there's some big ones, and I'll show you some of those. If you try and compare it to something like Linux, who has Linus, or Linus, as it prefers to be called, sitting at the top of what they call the
Hierarchy.
yes, the hierarchy. No, the benevolent dictator type structure. Within each of the structures, for the compute, for the networking, for storage, and so forth, and there's a billion of them now. We have a project technical lead, so he's like the guy who's at the top, and he works with his little team, and the whole way the project evolves is down to that little team, but the PTL is kind of like the lead guy in each of the projects. So it's a very unique structure. It's something that's been picked up a little bit by other structures. I know our foundation structure has just been picked up by another project called Cloud Foundry, which is a layer that sits above Openstack, or can sit above various clouds. So it's kind of something that might catch on. Who knows? We'll see how we go. So this is a very old slide, and I didn't have time yesterday to put together a new one, but there's a whole bunch more people using OpenStack than that. How's it all governed and run? As I said at the start, it was Rackspace that sort of took over the management. NASA aren't in the business of doing cloud software, so they kind of backed out of it and said, hey, we just need to keep sending people into space, which is what we're good at, and you guys can look after this software thing for us. So Rackspace took it over, and they decided in their wisdom to release this as a foundation, in the same way, I guess, that the Linux Foundation or the Apache Foundation looks after Linux or Apache. You can join up as a member, it's free. There's details at the end of the presentation about how to do that. Leading companies, as I said, are behind it, and sponsors. My company, Aptira, is a sponsor. There's 3 key components that manage the project: the board of directors, of which I'm a member. There's 24 of us. 8 of them come from the platinum sponsors, 8 of them come from the gold sponsors, and 8 of them are individually elected. I was individually elected some time back by my peers as a representative, so that was kind of cool to be part of that. Now I'm a gold sponsor, so I actually pay sponsorship money and become a director by that fact. I'll get to the point of this in a minute. Is that there's 24 of us, and we really never get anything done. Because if you can imagine 24 people sitting in a room trying to come to any sort of sane decision on anything, it's really, really difficult. So we have this board of directors that sets the strategic direction, which doesn't do anything. We have much. They do, but I'm being a bit facetious. You have the project technical leads who look after the technical parts of the project. The board of directors look after legal and marketing and stuff like that. PTL's solely on the code. And then we have the user committee, which is charged with presenting the user input or what's happening in the actual community back into the project. So they're the 3 key components to manage the project. Sponsors, as I said, the founding sponsors, the 8, it's limited to 8 sponsors. So those guys at the top, they're stuck there. It's a really weird HP. It's kind of like in a cloud. As I said, we are a sponsor too, which is a big commitment for us. We have the same level of commitment as people like Dell and Cisco and Hitachi and Huawei. So we're pretty committed to the project. Why is it relevant here in Australia? Well, one of the facts is we are the most virtualized nation in the world. We have the biggest market share per cap of VMware-based infrastructure in the world. And unfortunately, virtualization is not cloud. It's just a component, or can be a component of cloud. but cloud uptake in Australia is still rather pedestrian. So it's kind of relevant that we can build clouds here that are free of US constraints. So there's not really much of an alternative if you want to go to cloud in Australia other than to go to Amazon or Azure or Rackspace.
Can you give an example of the kind of constraints you're talking about?
For cloud?
Yeah,
Well, do you want to build an Australian company that keeps the money in Australia? That's probably the one that first comes to mind. So we are an Australian company, domiciled in Australia. So if you, so for instance, Google was just in the news recently. All Google profits go offshore. So it's kind of, that's I guess the financial reason is a good one.
Yeah.
A very, very strong one, really.
Is it really in a global economy?
What's that?
Is it really in a commoditized global economy? That's still an issue.
Well, I think so, because we can build technologies here and export them. At the moment, we're not. We're importing everything. We're importing this technology all the time. So if we can get smart about building clouds in Australia, or cloud services, be they IaaS or SaaS or PaaS or something like that, and export them.
The flip side of that is what Amazon's enabled Australian businesses to do is grow at a scale that we couldn't do before. They brought the technology in.
I'll give you a non-financial reason later when Tristan's done.
I run a hosting company as well, so
No.
there's always two sides of the coin. That's an interesting argument.
Sure, I know, but the thing is how good is it Amazon for the Australian economy? Really? That's the key question. So do we want to support our own businesses, or do we want to support Jeff Bezos and make him even more billions of dollars? I mean, I'd like to be a billionaire too, so what there's obviously, primal soup. What that means is Openstack has a great deal of flexibility in it as well. You're not confined to the parameters that Amazon give you. Amazon, they have a huge feature set, a huge amount of permutations of what you can do within Amazon, but it's still limited. Whereas Openstack, you want to do something different? Great, write it, do it, add it into the code. Start another project that can do this part of whatever the entrepreneurial thing that you'd like to do with this software. It's exactly the same way as you can build things upon Linux, but you can't build upon Microsoft software because you can't change the way Microsoft Windows works. But you can build your own Linux if you want. Make it do exactly what you want. Reverse the brain drain. Let's build up skills here in cloud. Again, that comes back to building industry here and building diverse technology solutions here. The next one, organisations realising Openstack is the only way to glue their infrastructure together. When you look at things like network functions virtualization, which is basically how someone like a telco would work, and mobile platforms, for instance, in somewhere like Telstra. Where do they go in terms of trying to build a flexible cloud-based platform internally to build mobile platforms on? Well, they could go proprietary. They could stay with whatever they're doing now, or they could look at something like an open source based platform for that, to give them, I guess, more flexibility and more ability to control what they do with their network functions as time evolves and as they introduce more and more cloud-like technologies to their internal infrastructure. Government adoption. Government, in no uncertain terms, can use, in certain situations, can use external cloud providers. So there is only one option. If they want to build a cloud-like solution, a private cloud-like solution, you're going to have to use something that's either domiciled here or that's free of security issues or constraints that external software providers or proprietary software providers might give. So there's certainly interest in that in not only federal government, but we know the New South Wales government, especially the Queensland government, in looking at Openstack as a platform to build cloud structures in-house for their services. Puppies and cows. Has anyone heard the expression about puppies and cows? So a few people have. So puppies. So in the old days we had these things called puppies, which are servers that we looked after, multi-tiered server infrastructure. In the same way that puppies, when they get sick, you take them to the vet and go to all measure of degrees to try and make your puppy well, we would do that with our servers, with our server infrastructure. The way we build infrastructure these days is cows. So you have, rather than a bunch of cherished puppies that you look after very closely, you have a bunch of cows that if one cow dies, you shoot it in the head and the other cows take over your business.
Cattle.
Cats. The other part is jobs. I'll talk more about that in a minute. So, why is Openstack relevant internationally? Dr. Li Ming, when I was up in Beijing in August, 2 years ago now, it was quite a while ago, I tried to tweet his title and his name and I couldn't fit it in a single tweet. Just too much for a tweet. But he was kind of big in the Chinese government, and he got up at the start of a conference of about 5,000 OpenStack enthusiasts over there and said that. And that kind of struck home about the seriousness that the Chinese government and the Chinese technology industry is treating OpenStack. And that kind of, to me, as an emerging power in the economic world stage, was kind of important. That's reflected also in what I've seen in travelling to India. It's also reflected in what I've seen travelling to Africa. In Kenya, the guys down there are building little tiny OpenStack clouds to be able to build local clouds because their latency and the problems they have with network connectivity and things like that are so great that they can build from single server up clouds to be able to provide utility compute resources to Kenyan businesses, which is kind of cool. And they're doing it on open source software and free software. And it's kind of fun too, because I get to come and talk to people like you and drink with you and probably meet you later and stuff. So it's kind of, as I said, been new to me. It's something that I got into a couple of years ago, and I've met so many cool people around the world. And as a jaded old sysadmin, has refreshed my interest in machines to some degree. One thing I touched on before is there is massive job demand in OpenStack. There is zero unemployment in the OpenStack community. If you have good OpenStack skills, I guarantee you will have a job. There's no question about that. That's a US statistic there. I don't know how relevant that is, but that's something that they pulled out of the US job market. We're looking for all those things there. If you are any one of those, there are companies all over the world looking for people with those skills. So there's some links down the bottom, and as I said, we'll post this up so you can.
I'll just add that the easiest way to get an OpenStack job is to have some commits or be contributing in some way.
If you're a developer, yeah.
It's a shoe-in.
Yeah, just it really is a very hot job market, and people are poaching people out of companies all over the place. We took a whole out of Cisco just the other day. So how it works, these are some of the places to go and have a look as well. OpenStack.org/community. If you're technical, go to the right-hand side. If you just want to go and get involved in the community and be a user, stick on the left-hand side there. A few links there, as I said, we'll post those up and that's how to contact OpenStack and me and Aptira, and I haven't got Sina out there, but I'm sure they'll tell you later what's going on. So what we're going to do now is we're going to have a little demo about what this actually all means, right? So we're going to do this firstly through a dashboard on a demo OpenStack cluster. So what this is a bunch of, as I said before, commodity or basic, no-name, who cares hardware with OpenStack built over the top of it. And we're going to build a network, we're going to build some web servers, I think, We're going to do it through the dashboard first, and then we're going to show you how to do it in an automated fashion. Because the whole point of this is you don't want to actually be going and building this and doing this each time. What you want to do is be able to replicate this so that if you want to build infrastructure the second time, click a button and it's all done. So I go up on the first time and I build 3 servers and a couple of database servers and the networks to connect them together. Next time I do it, I go and push a button and I build that in an automated fashion. So I'll hand over to Sina now.
Sorry. Hey guys, I'm Sina. So just to answer those couple of questions with my view, cloud is basically just an abstraction. So you've got compute, storage, and networking, and then you have some software on top that allows you to interact with it using the same way that you program your computer, you can program compute storage. Second question, which was reasons about why you might want to build your own cloud. I would say the #1 reason that we're seeing is that Amazon is a problem in its own right? So last year was the first year that non-IT spend was more than IT spend in large organizations all over the world, right? And what's been happening is marketing, finance, departments like that are going out and they're buying AWS stuff with their credit cards because they just can't wait for their local department to do anything, right? If you have a marketing deadline or a website to launch, you need it yesterday, not in 2 weeks, right? So there's this huge creep of IT that's not under the control of IT departments, and one of the best ways to bring it back in is to offer your internal customers the same things that they were going external for. Right? If you can bring it in-house, then it's under your control. So that, at least from an IT perspective, that's my main reason. So yeah, like Tristan said, I'm just going to demo this. This is the latest version of the Openstack dashboard, pointing at various Openstack services. As Tristan showed in the diagram, Openstack it's kind of in layers. So you get standard hardware, shared services, and compute storage and networking. All of those are accessible by API, and this dashboard that you see here is just a Django framework that's making API calls to those services. Right? So there's no intelligence or database behind this application. It's all API. So what I thought I'd demonstrate tonight is just building up like an N-tier application architecture that you might use to deploy WordPress or whatever your customers like, right? So let's say you have something that you deploy a lot of, and you want to automate it, or you want to offer it to your customers in a utility model, or any reason like that, then basically that's what I'm going to show you today. So down the left-hand side, we have compute, network, and orchestration. Orchestration is what I'm going to show you at the end. And I'm just going to go quickly through these tabs to show you that the project that we have here is empty. There's nothing here. So there's no instances. There's virtual machines or containers, depending on the OpenStack backend. Volumes, like I said, there's something left over there. Like I said earlier to Tristan, he missed out on the block storage. So you have the ability, if you desire, to ask for virtual disks that you can attach to your virtual machines. Right? It's just an extra layer of abstraction. These are the images. So basically, you just boot up one of these, comes online pretty quickly after the first boot. Now, access and security is just one quick survey. Is how many people here have used AWS before? Awesome, right? So most people here are familiar with the idea of security groups already. They're like a layer 3 firewall that's outside the control of the virtual machine. So even if someone breaks in, they can't open a port or whatever, the control is in your dashboard, right? And it allows you to define the layer 3 boundaries of your application, regardless of how many VMs you have or whatever. It's just another abstraction like that. The key pairs tab up here just allows me to import SSH keys, public keys, so that they can be injected into Linux and Unix virtual machines on boot. Floating IPs, it's the concept of, so like Tristan was saying about puppies and cows, you can like take down a server if it's misbehaving instead of worrying about maintaining it, and you just point a floating IP to the new instance that you bring up instead of that one, right? So you have some floating IPs that are your front-facing DNS addressed IPs, and if an instance goes down, you just shut it down via the API and you bring up a fresh one with the image or whatever that you pre-prepared, and you point the floating IP at the user. And finally is the API access. So these are the various services that this dashboard is calling to show you all the things that I'm showing you now. There's compute, network, image, CloudFormation, volume, EC2, orchestration, and identity. So you might see some things there that you've heard of from AWS before. That's because this Openstack cloud and most Openstack clouds support some AWS APIs at the front end as well as Openstack APIs, right? So there's EC2 and there's CloudFormation. And Tristan mentioned OpenStack Swift before, which is an object store that supports Amazon S3 API for storage. And up the top there, you've got these two little download buttons that allow you to grab a credentials bundle and do development from the command line or the terminal. So next we've got the network tab. And like I said, this is an empty project. And what we should see here is the administrator provided public network that we can attach virtual machines to with floating IPs. We have essentially an empty list of virtual routers and virtual networks. So the first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to create a couple of networks. Hoping that my Wi-Fi doesn't drop out in the middle of this. So this is going to be the management network. Now the OpenStack compute engine, which is called Nova, provides a service which is called a metadata server. If you use AWS, you'll be familiar with the idea of a metadata server. The metadata server provides, for example, the SSH keys and other things that the instance wants to know about immediately after it's booted, right? So the network comes online, it hits this metadata server, and it grabs some information like what's my SSH key, what Ubuntu Aptira I should use, or whatever, right? And you can also put your own metadata into the metadata server. So the purpose of this network that I'm about to create here is simply to give me access to that metadata network, but at the same time I'm just going to use it as a management network for accessing via SSH or whatever. And so I'm just going to override the DNS with some Google public DNS. And there is the network. And so you can see that little delay there, that's actually making a fresh API call to find out the status of the network. Right? So I make another network, it's called the application network. And this is where my 20.22.22. This is where my application will actually live, and the database will talk to the web servers and vice versa. So it's essentially the same. The only difference is that this is a routed network instead of an unrouted network, and I've specified what the gateway will be there. It's good. So we've got two networks. Next up is a virtual router. So these are virtual networks in the realest sense of the word. There's virtual ports, virtual switches, virtual routers. You plug them together, you end up with a network topology. This is going to be called the application router. And set the gateway for this router to be that public network that I showed you before. And as well as that, I'm going to add an interface to this router so that it is on the application network. And it's going to go and figure out that it needs to be that gateway address that I set. You see down the bottom there, and the admin speed is up. Great. So when I go back to the network topology, I got the management network, I got the app network, which is routed through the public network to the internet. So that's done. Access and security next. So I want to set up some security groups. The first security group, we'll call it, so we'll call this one jump box. Now, you can see that the networks I created there, they're not publicly accessible, right? So I'm going to set up what's called a jump box, and I'm going to give that a floating IP, and it's going to be my access point to the application, right? It's going to be the secure access point to the application. And in this jump box security group, I'm going to put a single rule. You can see there's already two rules there by default. I'm just going to say allow SSH from everywhere. Now, you can put any virtual machine image you want into Openstack and boot it up. In this case, we're using what's called the Ubuntu Cloud image. It's designed to work on AWS or other public clouds. And by default, it's designed to not take any SSH connections except from the key that I'm providing here, right? So although I'm allowing it to world, it's not really that insecure. If I'm going too fast or if you have any questions, feel free to stop me, right? So the next security group is www. And I'm just going to allow 80 and 443 in the same way. So the two default rules that are there just allow traffic out, basically. So 80. And 443, which I'm sure all of you are well aware are the HTTP and HTTPS ports. And so I'm just going to make a management security group so that my management network actually makes sense and secure to use. And this time I'm going to do 22, but I'm only going to allow 10.20.21.0/24, right? So VMs that I use with this security group, they're only going to be accessible on SSH through the management network. And finally, I'm going to make one more security group, which is database. And the idea here is to open up the MySQL port just on the application network. So you can see, before I booted up a single VM or anything, I've already sort of built up the architecture of what the application looks like, right? I've restricted the data flows, and I'm pretty much ready to go. So normally what I would do at this point, I've already imported it here, is I would import my public key pair, and that's basically just click this button, and I paste the public key into there, and I give it a name, right? So that's what that is there. And now we can begin booting up virtual machines. So the first one, like I said, is going to be my jump box. It's going to be a small virtual machine which has the following specifications. I just want one of them. I want to boot from an image. We're going to skip through. I'm not going to really show you what these other sources of booting are. It's a bit more in depth. And I'm going to define that security group, use that key pair, and now I'm going to say I want the first Ethernet interface to be management, the second one to be application, and I can specify what's called a post creation script, which is I can inject some data with the metadata server to say boot this script after you finish booting, right? So I'm just going to say bin bash and give me a DHCP client on the second network interface. I don't know what that is. Alright, so away it goes. And now I can start spinning up the rest of the application. So I want DB, master, and I want a big one. I want the biggest one we got. So it's got 8 cores and 16 gigs of RAM, that's plenty. And this is going to be the same Ubuntu. It's going to be the MySQL, the database security group. Networking, same as before. And right, so you can see that I'm starting to build up the application really quickly, right? Like, I think I've only been talking for maybe 10 or 15 minutes, and we're already to the point of deploying virtual machines. The next step is like a Puppet agent or something like that you use to manage all those things, right? So I want to DB slave. And this one's going to be the same. Database security group again. Networking. I'm going to add. Same script. I should just get this in my. deploy. And finally, I want the front end, right? I want 3 web servers with which I can front my application. I want www, give me 3, medium should be good, with the same Ubuntu. I want this security group, same networking, and same place creation. Alright, that's going to go away and give me 3 instances, so I don't have to do the same thing if I know they're all going to have the same name, basically. And the appendage on the end there is to UID of the instance, basically. So away we go, and we can go back to the network topology. Oh, it's the wrong. Right, so this is the small view. Can't really see much. You can see that some things are happening here. We give a normal view, and it's a bit easier to see. So we've got some instances, we've got a router, we've got the networks. That's the basic architecture of the application, right? And then the final, the piece de la resistance is to stick some floating IPs onto my front end and my jump box. Right, so more associate floating IP. Have to excuse the squashness of the screen. I think it's something wrong with the monitor thing that I've got set up here. So I'm just going to ask for an IP from the public network. And yep, I want it to go onto that particular port to be associated. Come on. And then you get like a little message up the top saying, yeah, you've done right. And so basically, that's it. You can stick your DNS one, login in front of that, and that's your application, right? Are people here familiar with tools like Puppet or Chef, anything like that? Yes, I'm getting a few nods, but not many. So Puppet is a configuration management tool. You can use it to essentially run the configuration of many hosts from a single host, right? And so with these raw servers, assuming I had a Puppet master to go along with them, it would be not a lot of work to turn this into a full-fledged application. You install MySQL, create the tables, install WordPress or whatever the front-end application is, point it at the database service and so on. So that's basically half an hour or less of spinning up the application. Now, while I'm cleaning up after myself, are there any questions? No questions. Blown away. No? Don't care. It's all the same. So yeah, I'll just clean up after myself and I'm going to show you the automated version.
So who here's actually worked on Openstack, or we got any developers in the room, or we got any users in the room? We got anyone that's done DevStack or anything like that? DevStack?
CloudStack.
CloudStack?
That's just close.
It's close, but no cigars. Okay, so there's a thing called DevStack if you want to have a play with this that we can download and install. Don't do it on your, if you've got all the mixed laptops, don't do it straight on that. But
Put in a virtual machine.
put it in a virtual machine and it will basically install the entire little Openstack infrastructure in a virtual machine box. So it's kind of it's a good way to get involved and have a bit of a look and see what's going on.
Everyone's happy? Cool. So a relatively new part of the Openstack project is called Heat. If you've heard of AWS CloudFormation, it's essentially the same idea. You can specify the environment that you want to boot up. In this case, it's called the stack. You can specify the environment you want to boot up programmatically, and just basically upload that, click the button, and away it goes, does a void, right? If there's a failure, you can say roll back at this point. You can have dependencies on different resources and stuff. So what I've done here is I've made a heat, or is it a hot file? Is it a hot file or is it a heat file?
Well, hot is like the language.
It's a hot file.
The JSON.
Right. So I made a hot file here that that
It's a
basically
YAML
just
file.
it's a YAML file that defines what I just did for you, right? So if any of you wanted to go home and try this on your own personal OpenStack cloud, this is the file you need to use.
Well,
right?
it's not just not your own personal OpenStack cloud. So one of the fundamental goals of OpenStack was to be what you build for OpenStack, you can run on public cloud, private cloud, any cloud anywhere. So that was one of the fundamental design goals of OpenStack. It's kind of almost there because there's a few differences between, for instance, HP's public cloud, Rackspace's public cloud, but I know Rackspace is making a great deal of effort to try and iron out some of those differences. So if you build something on DevStack or on this or whatever, you should be able to take that and run it on any OpenStack cloud. So that's the kind of one of the things that we're hoping as OpenStack gets momentum, that will be a sort of compelling reason for people to develop SaaS and PaaS applications on.
So a little bit of background, I used to work at the University of Melbourne on an OpenStack cloud there, and scientific workloads on OpenStack, it's a real thing. We're not just talking about WordPress and stuff here, we're talking about the ability to spin up, say, give me 500 instances, I need to process this data that's being streamed from the hospital MRI machine right now, and process, and I want to email the results to me, and then I want you to turn the machines off. Right?
So the big cloud called NeCTAR was one of the leading global deployments of OpenStack, and it's used for scientific research, and they do cool things like they work out bushfire patterns where bushfires are going, and they're doing stuff with marine biology, tracing great white sharks or something like that up and down the coast, and all sorts of stuff like that. So there's a whole bunch of stuff going on in the NeCTAR cloud. It's across 8 locations, I think.
Pretty much every university in Australia.
We just launched, we helped the ANU launch theirs a few weeks ago down in Canberra, so they're growing out across the country. And that's a federated cloud that the university researchers use across the country. CERN is another classic example of that, of an OpenStack cloud, a massive OpenStack cloud. When they fire up the Large Hadron Collider, they generate a petabyte of data every second. So if you know what a petabyte is, it's
1,024 terabytes.
Yeah, terabytes, which is 1,024 gigabytes. So it's a lot of data. It's basically a rack full of data every second, right? So they get about 20, 30 seconds out of that. So they've built this great big distributed network, and what they do with all that data after that is they use OpenStack across the board to be able to process that data across, I think, 6 locations across Europe. OpenStack cloud. So in research, OpenStack's a big deal.
Yeah. So maybe what I'll do here is I'll turn the syntax highlighting off. And I will make the font. So I'm going to press it out. Excuse me just a second. Oh, that's pretty big. Whoa. Alright, this is a bit better. Maybe I can turn the syntax highlighting on. Yeah, great. Okay, so the top of the file basically is specifying what version of the heap template you're using. There's a short description, and the first section of the file is the parameters, right? And this allows you to so you have a heap file, and you can address various things as you would parameters in a function, like you would call it. So I've got a bunch of parameters here that define basically all the variables and the things that I just showed you, like the name of the network, or the CSIRO of the network, or which key that I'd like to use when I boot the VMs, and which image I'd like to use when I boot the VMs, and so on, right? So there's a whole bunch of those. And then we get to the actual resources. So the first resources, like you saw me creating, I'm creating the networks first. And then I'm creating the subnets within those networks. Creating a router. I'm setting a few things on the router, like the public gateway, and the interface for the application is supposed to point to. And then I'm creating those security groups that you just saw. So for a rough estimate, this took me, I think, about 3 hours worth of effort. And I've already actually reused it a whole bunch of times. It's already saved me at least a day worth of work. And finally we get to the virtual machines themselves. So here's my jump box, right? And this is that little script you saw me put, but a slightly more advanced version. Database master. These virtual machine definitions will almost look the same, basically. Virtual machine, database slave. This is web 1, and then web 2 and 3, they're all the same. Right, so I've got this file that I wrote, and I want to tell Openstack to parse that file and do what I say, basically. Respect my authority. So here is that file. Heat demo button, and away she goes. That's it. Oh no, sorry, I'm going to give it a name. So it'll be the Port80 demo. I'm going to password 123. It's the most secure password known to man. Launch. There we go. Right, so this Port80 demo. Stack refers to, please excuse the many connections, but each of these is one of the resources that you just told me to find. And you can see some of them are shaking and going green, which means that they've correctly occurred as I specified. So here are all the resources that I defined. Come on. There we go. So you can see those are the resources that I've defined and the state that they're currently in, and whatever happened to them last and when it happened to them. And again, there's an events thing, which is basically the same thing, right? And so if we go back to topology, you can see the first VM is booted up. And what I've done is I've set in the YAML file to say that each of the VMs should sort of depend on the others, right? So none of the VMs should start until the jump box is started. The database slave shouldn't start until the database master is started. And the web machines don't start until the database is online, right? And this gives me like some leeway if I'm using a tool like Puppet to do things as the virtual machines come along. And so as it's going and turning green, if I go back to that network topology, you should see essentially the same thing coming up. And I think it takes, I timed it before I started, it takes about 3 minutes, right? So once you've written the YAML and you have it ready there, let's say you're a WordPress host or something like that, bang, 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 bang. I'm sure you all have procedures already for deploying things like WordPress, but these are fully individualized WordPress, you know, with multi-tier network, security groups on top, all the things you can need, and you can do it all programmatically instead of using Java. So, oh, there you go. There's the rest of it. So, basically that's it. Oh, you can see I didn't clean up one of my routers. I'll do that now. Cool. I'm happy. Any questions? I heard there was going to be some questions. I heard someone was asking what's the difference between CloudStack and Openstack. I can tell you that. Okay, so the difference between CloudStack and Openstack, like Tristan said, Openstack was started as the love child of NASA and Rackspace, and it's sort of grown out of that organically. But CloudStack was originally a proprietary Java solution for doing something like this that was bought by Citrix and then open sourced as something called cloud.com. And yeah, the adoption at the start of the project was very different. The adoption has been much lower because of it. It's now an Apache project, and it looks like it's starting to get a lot better. But I would say that OpenStack has 6 months to a year in terms of scalability, like really large deployment capability over CloudStack. So that's the main difference right now, I'd say. And same with Eucalyptus, which is pretty good if you need an EC2 compatible tiny cloud. If you want something really big, I think OpenStack is right. OpenStack is really the only thing that can get you, you know, multiple data centers, AWS style.
Is that Aptira like a load balancer?
No, it's just a virtual router. So I can spin up another virtual machine and install HAProxy or Nginx and make it a load balancer. Or there is now in Openstack a project called Load Balancer as a Service, which is part of the networking project called Neutron. But no, what you see there is just a regular virtual router.
So when do you decide to do Amazon? When do you decide to go Openstack?
Well, I guess it depends, right? I would say that in a lot of cases, if you're doing a greenfields thing, it makes a lot of sense to evaluate whether Openstack meets your needs, you know what I mean? Like, if you're going to build a new thing from scratch, then you might as well figure out what actually gets you the best bang for your buck and gets your customers what they actually want, right? And in other cases, where if you're just doing like small, tiny things, then it's really like a matter of personal preference. If you're just firing up a few small virtual machines here and there, this cloud that I'm showing you is EC2 compatible, which is an AWS API, right? So any app that you write for AWS, you can just as easily work on this infrastructure. So basically it comes down to customer preference of, I want to point to this API and point up this API because it's cheaper, or I like the support better, or whatever, right?
And pricing wise, like Amazon's got method scale.
Sure.
If you go Openstack, you sort of run it on somebody.
Yep.
So how does that compare?
Well, you can look at Rackspace. So Rackspace and HP and DreamHost, a lot of other companies provide OpenStack-based public cloud in a similar vein to what AWS provides, maybe not as advanced, but in a very similar vein. And they compete on price. I would say that the second tier is actually pretty good competing on price compared to the first tier, which they only compete with each other, right? AWS competes with GCE, which competes with Zero Plus. That's it. So, yeah, I think on a pricing basis, OpenStack clouds, OpenStack public clouds compete quite well.
The prices have been changing a lot this year, right?
Sure, all the cloud providers have been deflating their prices.
Yeah.
Started with Azure this year, I think, and then everyone sort of followed it.
That kind of just demonstrates that there's a lot of room to move.
Yeah. There's a lot of built-in margins there.
Amazon have pretty good margins, you could say, at the moment. They probably go a lot further down, and if you want to run your own equipment and replicate their stack, then you can take advantage of that.
What's the overhead of Openstack?
It's all Python, right? So I would say the overhead is pretty high unless you're talking about the medium to large scale, right? If you're talking about a small scale cloud, then there's going to be a relatively large amount of overhead for the benefits that you get out of it. But if you're trying to run something really big, like a lot of the people here work for large hosting companies, they're a perfect example of the scale that you can use Openstack at and get good cost benefit, right? So, is that?
So when you say medium to large, what sort of scale are you talking about? What sort of?
I would classify small to be anything less than 50 nodes. Medium to large is like 50 to maybe 250, and then once you get above 250 nodes, you're starting to talk about large scale. At the last summit, there was people talking about 700 node single OpenStack regions. When I worked at NeCTAR for the thing there, that was about 3,000 cores when I started, and now it's approaching something like 80,000 cores, right? It's federated across lots of regions and stuff like that. So that's like, and that's small. Like we're a tiny OpenStack cloud in Australia compared to like what the NSA runs, what do they call that? Nuclear CERN, sorry, and lots of universities in the US and places like that. They're running huge OpenStack clouds. In China, they're using it for everything. Hosting, things like Revo, everything, right? There's huge clouds that from companies that I've never heard of. Like I was in Hong Kong 6 months ago for the summit then, and there was a lot of...
All these guys came out and said, yeah, we're running like 50,000 servers.
Yeah, just insane scale things. Because like they're never going to AWS, they're never going to Azure, they're never going to GCE, right? Like they have cheap labor, cheap hardware, direct from the supplier, goes in the racks, give me the open source on top. And some of the best contributors to OpenStack come from China. Our mates at UnitedStack who used to work for Sina.com, which happens to be my name in case you didn't know this.
Just trying to get the domain.
Yeah, they're running really large scale things on OpenStack. right? And that's what Tristan was saying before about flexibility. Like, AWS is one model of scale. GCE is a very different model of scale. It's very, very different from what AWS is doing, and HP Cloud is a bit different again because they're just trying to sell you compute on HP Cloud, right? They're still just trying to sell you hardware. They put this in front of it to like sell it to you. And yeah, I think that's the best way to put it, is that for those really large-scale projects that have some requirement for flexibility, Openstack is pretty much your only shot.
Like NFV, like telco, great. That's why Ericsson is doing a lot of work with the NFV stuff now to, like I said before, mobile platforms and things like that, to develop infrastructure for that.
If nobody knows what NFV is, it's network function virtualization. So someone asked before about a load balancer. That's a network function, but we're also talking about PABX, telephony routing, all kinds of things that go on in telco land. They want to be able to do that on demand like this. So that's a really big thing, right? And you're not going to get that out of Eucalyptus or AWS. It's just not, doesn't work.
Now, as far as internal, I'm hearing a lot of web and a lot of research.
Yep.
How does it compete with like VMware as far as enterprise? Because you know you have to be certified.
Sure.
The virtualization platform has to be certified. So
I'm glad you asked.
Hyper-V is only SAP certified. VMware is only SAP certified. How can I do this? Because you know people can lose their jobs if they choose this. How is it Openstack working?
I'm so glad you asked, because Openstack is a vendor-agnostic framework that sits on top of various things. So like I said, cloud is an abstraction, right? So Openstack abstracts things like hypervisors, whether they're VMware, Hyper-V, Xen, KVM, Docker, Linux containers, you name it, right? They abstract away storage, whether it's NetApp, EMC, VMware vSAN, whatever, right? And networking again, Cisco, CSIRO, whatever, this sits on top of that and abstracts it away, right? So this cloud that I just demonstrated to you on is actually pointing to a rack full of VMware ESXi hosts in our data center, right? So this is VMware, and it would not be very difficult to make another zone of this that's Hyper-V, and so we can even give customers the ability to say, I want to boot these VMs on Hyper-V, these ones on KVM, and these ones on VMware. No problem. That's how flexible it is. So it's really, like I said, it's a framework that sits on top of Hyper-V or KVM or whatever and abstracts it away. So you're just making an API call using your programming skills, and you're getting back a common resource that always looks the same, whether it's VMware or KVM underneath. To the program that you write, it is a virtual machine.
So in layman terms, just an orchestration layer.
Yeah, it orchestrates up to a certain point in the stack, and then you have to use other things on top of it to get the rest of the way. Because it's infrastructure as a service. It really is quite literal. You get data center infrastructure as a service. You don't get anything above that or anything like that.
You talked earlier about the high take on virtualization,
Yep.
but not cloud. So, well, I mean, they're different things, right? But why do you think cloud's not taking up so much?
I don't know. I'd like to say it's because we don't have a real cloud industry. I mean, we've had some who's the little guys that are running all
All the things with the stuff?
yeah, the things of the stuff. That's right. Yeah, I don't know. I just guess that we're just a little bit behind what Silicon Valley are doing, basically, which is typical of other technologies as well. I think
VMware did take off, right?
yeah, it did. But it's been like 10
years.
years. It's been 10 years now.
Yeah,
It's been around for a while, so.
I think there's a pretty large lead time between what happens in America and what happens here. America and Europe, really. And you can see it because research is the bleeding edge, right? So they're doing it there already. Give it another 3 or 4 years, and they'll be doing it everywhere.
The only state government in Australia that's picked up a cloud first policy is Queensland. And that says a lot, but Obama did that 3 or 4 years ago. That's why Openstack kicked off when the Nebula project was picked up by Vivek Kundra and then NASA and said, yeah, we're doing cloud. And you have to justify why you don't do cloud as a US government project. We don't have that here. We need to get that thinking into the government departments. And it's kind kind of getting there a little bit here and there, you know.
We were just talking to New South Wales government the other day, and they're definitely implementing, when you go to get a fishing license or something, soon that will be a virtual machine that's living on it.
I understand, they're doing it now.
Just to clarify, that's one department, the others are doing.
Well, they actually, apparently according to them, they set the trend, right? So,
They're not gonna say that.
oh, right.
They all say that.
They all say that. They all say that. They are all different silos.
You got
Government here, so they all say
50 CIOs fighting
Yeah.
for one job, basically.
Yeah.
Sure,
Yeah.
sure.
Yeah.
We're happy to see adoption wherever it happens, right? We're not going to say, oh, you guys aren't the entire government, therefore, no.
Oh, yeah, for government, it's reducing costs. Cloud will be part of it, but it's irrelevant. They just want the application to come up on the desktop. You can do it for me cheaper, that's it. You know, cloud, Openstack and things like that is not really going to be floppy.
We're
It's gonna be,
talking to a lot of different government departments, and I can tell you that costs are not their only concern. They have other concerns. Yeah.
The New South Wales government, you know, when sovereignty and stuff like that is not in. You know, when Queensland government, you mentioned, signed up holders for Office 365. I work for an agency now that's a consulting for an agency now that's just basically gone out to Office 365 themselves.
Sure, so Office 365 is a fairly large delta from where we're talking about here in terms of cloud. Like that's software as a service, right? And it's probably running in an Azure data center.
Yes, but that's, I mean, what I'm saying is that's purely where their interest is. It's you can do it for this cost, I don't care where it comes from.
And the reason why a lot of the, just to give you clarity on AWS, and this is just coming from the US and stuff that I've seen when I first came here. So a lot of different cultures over whatever, they adopt a name. A lot of people go to AWS not because of functionality, because if you actually look at the fine print, if you actually look at the configuration you get, it is not cheap.
Right. Well, it depends on how intelligently you use that configuration.
Correct.
Right?
But a lot of people go to AWS because of the name. They're not going for anything else.
Sure.
In cost, and they think cost. If I was brand new, it's me, for what I know, I will go Google Cloud because of the security. I would go for the data center. I would go for that because everything is Google right now.
Sure.
But I'm not knocking open.
No.
I'm just saying, just from a sales point of view, seeing what's out there also. But Openstack, I see, has a lot of potential. I think it's just doing what we're doing now as far as communicating, helping each other to educate them.
So, like I said, right, in terms of greenfield deployment, right, if you're talking about a really large-scale thing, what I suggested is you can go to GCA or AWS or Azure, whatever you like, right? But if you're going to build something from scratch, evaluate whether OpenStack meets your needs. Don't just like, do you know what I mean? Like, there's 4 things to evaluate: 3 big public clouds and OpenStack. And you can crunch the numbers yourself for your use case. Whereas with the existing public cloud things, it's like a uniform offering. It only does it. And I can tell you, I can't speak too much about it, but I can tell you that government departments in Australia don't just care about cost, they care about other things. You'll have to take my word for it. This is my lovely OpenStack presentation.
We'll talk about this later. I'll talk about it. I know who you're talking about. I know who you're talking to. Half of these people used to work with us. We know who you're talking to. His last name starts with H. It starts with H. So we already know who you're talking about. But yeah, good. Sorry.
Questions? Everyone's happy? It's almost 8 o'clock. 11 minutes to go. No question? Would you like to see a picture of a cat?
No.
So I'm curious who here would feel they might be working with OpenStack in the next 6 months or a month or 2 years in some way. Do you think what you're doing for a job or what you're doing now might have some sort of relevance or something like that? I'm just curious why you would come along and see this, if it was of interest to you or not of interest to you or interest to the boss, whatever is there.
Is it the free pizza and beer?
What you just showed there would take about 2 weeks to change control
Right.
to implement.
That's why people go on AWS, right? They can't wait 2 weeks for their marketing presentation to go up on the launch day of the product, you know? It's, yeah.
It should be shown what's sort of going on with this.
As we said before, okay, we don't have much time to do, but basically what's happening here is that, as we said before, that's controlling a VMware vCenter deployment in the background. So behind that, it doesn't really matter if we pay VMware the Red Hat base Hyper-V based or whatever. In this instance, it's controlling vSphere. So what the beauty of this is what we do with a customer, for instance, who has that VMware deployment they're very safe with and very comfortable with. They have business processes, technical processes, change control, all this sort of shit going on with their departments, and they don't want to touch that. They don't want to mess with that. So this doesn't really touch with it. We call this a wrapper, and we put that in front of on the side of it, if you like, and be able to give. They have the ability to give their departments or their customers or whatever the ability to be able to spin up those resources themselves.
He's talking about us, right? We were that company a couple of years ago, completely operationalized around VMware. And when I started, he kind of laughed. He was like, "There's no way that our customers will." All our customers are.
Replace either with something like this, you know, like a completely sort of raw open source, basically commune thing that these weird guys in America started. So what we looked at the time was, and we got this is when we started to get heavily involved with this about 2 or 3 years ago, was making it work with VMware, because everyone said, oh, Openstack, that's something an alternative to VMware. Well, no, it's not. No, it's not. It's something that works with VMware. So
Openstack competes with vCloud. It doesn't compete with ESXi and vSphere.
Yeah.
Right? It's one layer up.
So that's the beauty of what you saw there is if you have a big vSphere deployment or something like that, and you want to be able to, I guess, mobilize your departments to be able to create resources on demand, we put the OpenStack layer to the side of it, and they can do that, what you just saw just then, without touching the data.
Does anyone want this? Should I upload it somewhere? No,
You
no,
can take that to Rackspace Cloud, Hosting Cloud, you can take it to DreamHost, you can take, if you're a researcher, has anyone here got an edu.org.au, edu.au email address? Anyone got, no one's got an edu.au, you have? You can go to NeCTAR Cloud and spin up your own OpenStack stuff for free.
Yeah.
Ooh. So, yeah.
Oh, there's a quota built in,
But you could do that.
It's here, NeCTAR, what is it, RC, NeCTAR, Research Cloud is the RC. Right, that's not it.
Somewhere out there.
There's a thingy here somewhere that allows you to log in. There it is, Research Cloud. Enter Cloud here. There you go. And so they just basically modified, also this is another good example of customizing OpenStack actually. So they modified the existing authentication mechanism of OpenStack, which is called Keystone, to work with something called the Australian Access Federation, which basically allows anyone with a .edu.au email address to log in anywhere, any university in Australia, right? So you can take your identity with you, and they hooked OpenStack into it. A good friend of mine lost his SIM in Melbourne, and so you can log in with the AAF credentials and away you go.
All right. One more question?
What you showed us on the end user service offering, can we see the management side of it? Or do you use the APIs just to...
We've got 6 minutes, I'm going to show you really quickly. Oh, have we? How much time do we have? We have 2 minutes? 1 minute? 30 seconds?
Yeah, 30 seconds.
Okay. Well, I'm going to try and show you as quickly as I can.
25.
He's mean!
And you said 30 seconds.
Yeah, that's fine. There'll be enough of it actually hold.
Okay, so here we've got, I'll just go back to the Anderson templates. So here is our vSphere that is being driven by OpenStack. Oh, please scroll up. Okay, never mind. You can see down the bottom here, these are all the actions spinning up and spinning down the stack that you just saw me go through. So it's powering on and powering off the machine.
So it's not through all the APIs with vCenter?
Yeah, so in this case, the vCenter driver for OpenStack Nova just makes API calls to vCenter, right? If using KVM, it makes API calls to Reaper. If using Xen, it's using the Xen API,
What I meant is, you know, you should have some sort of a management portal or something, you know, which you
an administrative version.
center,
Yeah, sorry, this has that. It's in a different tenancy, I can tell, but hang on. I could probably
Okay, Ben, your time.
Thank you very much for everyone to know. The streets are over here.
Hold on, guys, just give it up for Trina and thanks for the demonstration. Also, thank Anchor for the pizza and beer. Give it up. And wine. Okay, so remember to check out Port80 social media, the meetup page, and keep up to date with the announcements. Anything further on tonight, ask myself, Jess, or Chloe. And we look forward to seeing you. Stay for the pizza, drink all the beer, play some pool, and network with each other. If you don't know someone, talk to them.
I appreciate it was
Relatively.